Hello, everyone. Welcome to Track Talk. I'm your host, Ultimate Diecast Review, and this is a brand new podcast that will go over all things motorsports. From Formula One to NASCAR to IndyCar, you name it, we'll talk about it. And we'll be going over all the latest news, rumors, everything going on in the motorsports world. So without further ado, let us begin with our first topic, which is the 2024 NASCAR Cup Series season and what has happened over this off season. So the new season starts in a month, about approximately a month from now, with the Clash and then Daytona 2 weeks later. And we're going to look at what's happened. New car bodies have came out for Ford and Toyota, new driver changes, and what else has happened as well. So let's start off with the new car manufacturer bodies. And we'll start off with Ford because they are the most recent champions. They've won all 3 championships this year. And heading into next year, I think people expect a little bit more from them, especially with this new car that is very, very aggressive with the downforce in the front. It looks like people believe that this car could actually contend with Chevy for being the best of all 3 manufacturers next year. I don't really see that though. I think teams like RFK and Penske, they are definitely going to be showing out next year. I expect Logano, Blaney, Busch, or Keselowski, multiple wins next year. Cindric may be a win, but this car body could be a huge advantage to Ford in general. They might help him on the 1.5 mile tracks. I think they're still going to be really good on the short tracks. The super speedways are going to be good at, but we'll have to see the road courses as well, see how well they do on that. But that's Ford's new body looks very good, and I think it's going to do really well next year. Not as good as Chevy, but second for sure. And on the topic of Ford, let's talk about one of their teams, actually. SHR, Stewart-Haas Racing, and what they've done over the offseason. So this past season was a abysmal year for the team. Harvick ended up retiring after 22 years in the sport, which is incredible. 22 years in the Cup Series, which is incredible to think about. But they got 0 wins, multiple. Harvick was carrying the team on his back the entire year. He was only one of them that made the playoffs. Briscoe had a horrible year. Priest had a horrible year, and Almirola did not have as good a speed as Harvick as well. And Harvick and Almirola are gone now, and that brought in Josh Berry, who has been previously announced, but Noah Gragson was also recently announced to go to the number 10 car. But the problem with Stewart-Haas Racing is now that their oldest tenured driver at that team is Chase Briscoe, who's only been there now for 2 years. So they lack the veteran experience to lead these relatively new Cup Series drivers into the Cup Series. They are not. I feel like they're not ready for this yet. They all have so much talent, but are they well prepared to go face off against some of the best in the world in Cup? And putting that with the struggles that Stewart-Haas Racing has had recently, that I don't think it's going to be a good year for them next year. Maybe they'll get a win somewhere, maybe a super speedway win, but I don't see them contending for really anything next year. I would be shocked if they do. But another one team is Colleague Racing and what they've done over the offseason. So they have downsized from 2 cars to 1 car. AJ Allmendinger is going back to Xfinity, which I think is a really bad move on their part. And Daniel Hemrick will be the new driver of the 31 car next year. I don't like that at all. With him going to the Xfinity Series, Allmendinger, it doesn't feel like they're trying to win in Cup anymore. He was carrying the team on his back. He got them their win at the Charlotte Roval, their only win last year. And putting Hemrick in, who I would say doesn't have half the talent that Allmendinger does, and that's no disrespect. Allmendinger, I think, is one of the best road racers we've seen in NASCAR. He's along the likes of Marcos Ambrose, I honestly believe. But I don't see Hemrick doing as well as Allmendinger did in the Cup Series this year. I think that team's going to struggle in Cup, but Xfinity, however, that's where they're going to shine because they got Allmendinger back in the Xfinity car full time next year. Josh Williams is going to be in the 11 car, and that is a good pick because I think he's really underrated and can get the best out of his equipment. So watch out for that, especially on we're going to see on the short tracks. I feel like he's going to show out a lot. And then to end it off, they also just recently signed Shane Van Gisbergen to the 97 car full-time, which that is a huge pickup for them. If Allmendinger wasn't going to win on the road courses, they got him now to win. So them two are going to have absolute battles on the road course, I believe, and they might just be unstoppable on them now. I expect all three of them should make the playoffs relatively easily, I'd say. Shane on his road course capabilities. AJ is an all-around driver, but also road course specialist. But Josh Williams, I think, also can get it done anywhere. So 2 of the 3 have to make it in for this to be considered acceptable. But 3 of 3 would make this a great year, I feel like. But back on the discussion of the Cup Series, they have decided to actually enter the number 16 into the Daytona 500, Allmendinger driving the car. And yeah, so they've downgraded from 2 to 1. They're still running 2 cars in the 500 this year, which Allmendinger is running the 500, but they should have kept Allmendinger in Cup. I would have rather seen Hemrick still in Xfinity for maybe another year to 2 years, and then you can move him up if he's shown enough experience. But Allmendinger should have been the main guy in Cup Series. But I guess he lacked the sponsoring to do that, or the sponsorship, I should say, to stay in that ride. But that is just very unfortunate to me that they have decided to boot Allmendinger for Hemrick. But another team that recently had some changes, or is going to have some changes over the offseason, is Legacy Motor Club, who are going to be switching from Chevy to Toyota this season and becoming the 3rd full-time Toyota team in the Cup Series. So this overall, I think, is a really good move on their part because them going to Toyota, they're getting more manufacturer support than they were at Chevy because Chevy has more teams. They have Trackhouse, RCR, Hendrick, just off the top of my head, those 3. And they're all powerhouse teams. Plus they have JTG Doherty Racing and some others like, what else is another one? They have, man, I cannot think of another. How can I not think of another? Anyways, those 4 teams already have gotten a bunch of manufacturer support from them. They were already ahead, I'd say, of Legacy Motor Club entering this year. And especially with how abysmal this year has been for them, they had to make some changes. And going to Toyota is the right move. As if people don't like it, then they should realize that they're going to be more capable of winning and running up front if they run at Toyota than Chevy. So this is actually a really good thing for them to do. And Jones, I think, is an easy playoff contender now with Toyota back. With him driving for Toyota again, easy playoff contender. He should end up making the playoffs relatively easily. Nemechek, on the other hand, I'd expect him to be not that far off of him, but he's only ran 2 years. He's only ran 1 year of the Cup Series before, and that was in 2020, if I remember correctly. Yeah, 2020. And that didn't really go well for him, so he went back to the Truck Series for 2021, 2022. And going back to Cup now, I feel like he's more experienced than he was before, especially after his past Xfinity season where he won, I think it was 7 wins or something like that. It was insane what year he had. And this year, I think it's not a win. I don't think he's going to end up winning, but he should be able to run top 10, top 15 every week, I'd say, and be contending for maybe contending for a playoff spot, but I doubt it, honestly. This is the first year for this team in Toyota. I expect Jones to make it, not Nemechek, but 2025, if Jones ends up making it, then I think Nemechek has to make it for it to be a good season in 2025. But that's, if I remember, let me think. Is there anything else that has been of significance? That looks like it's really been it this off season. We still have stuff like one more thing is the Stage 60 program RFK made. This is a huge step up for Ford to what Chevy and Toyota have been doing. Chevy has the Project 91 with Trackhouse Racing, and Toyota has the 67 car that 2311 runs sometimes. And Ford having their own is a huge, huge gain because they can have international drivers driving for RFK, which is a really good team, and it can help them expand outward. Having David Reagan for the Daytona 500 increases their chance of getting a win for that team. It gives them a higher chance to actually run someone like, who knows, a lower prospect that Ford might want to hire. They can bring them into the Cup Series for a one-off or three races and see how they do before eventually moving them up at some point. And I think this is a really good idea for what they've done. This is a really good idea overall for RFK, and I expect some big names to come into that team. Some supercars drivers most likely from the New Zealand, Australia League. But we'll see on that. All right. So to our next topic now. We're going to change to the Formula One series and talk about Red Bull and what will they face any difficulties in 2024 from any other teams. Because it was revealed, I think it was today, that the team Red Bull has failed the FIA's testing on the first try. That is not good because that shows that they have obviously something that's not allowed on the car. And with teams like Mercedes and McLaren making so big improvements to their cars, Red Bull's dominance could be up in flames next year, where we have a closer championship battle and we have actual competition in the league for the first time since 2021. Now, do I expect McLaren or Mercedes? I don't expect the McLaren to be championship contenders next year. I expect Norris to get a win. That it has to happen, I think, next year. Now, Mercedes, on the other hand, Mercedes needs to get a win. And I think Hamilton will come back strong next year, end up finishing second in the championship. I can see Norris being third. But Verstappen, I feel like, will still be the most dominant guy next year, easily. If he isn't, then I would be shocked, because he was absolutely dominant for 2022, 2023. And I feel like it's going to be the same this year, but not as good as those previous years. However, if Red Bull does have the best car out of the gate and is able to keep that the entire season, then 2025 is going to be a piece of cake for them. Because teams are going to be focusing on their 2026 cars, getting them ready, and ready for the new regulations to come out. They're not going to be focused on the 2025 car. I doubt that would actually happen. But if Red Bull can get past 2024, they're fine for 2025. And I think they'll be ready for 2026. 2026 is going to be an unknown year because of the new regulations and the new car. But this year is a real test for that Red Bull team. Will they be able to continue dominating, or is someone else going to be able to show up and take away their championship and their consistent winning, their winning ways of recent? And all right, we are back, and this is the last topic of today, which is drivers that are on the cutting block this season. So what I mean by this is drivers in different forms of motorsport that are considered to be they are threatened to lose their ride. So I'm going to start with Formula One on this. And the first one is Lance Stroll, because his dad is not part of the Aston Martin team, if I'm correct, anymore. Pretty sure that he sold his stake in the company, or is starting to. So he's going to get fired. That is known now. His daddy's money is gone. So it's only a matter of time before he ends up getting removed from Aston Martin. And I fully agree with their removal of him when it happens, because he has not done anything since getting into F1, especially this past season where Aston Martin had one of the best cars and he was getting showed. He was worse than Fernando this entire season and didn't deserve to be in that good of a car. He did absolutely nothing this year, got in trouble at one point as well, and still is in F1 for some weird reason. It's time for him to go, and they put someone actually talented in that car for next season and beyond. A new talented driver that isn't a paid driver like Lance was. So, next driver I want to talk about is at Williams, Logan Sargent, the United States driver. He isn't as bad as Lance, nowhere near, but this is a make or break year for him, I feel like. Williams has been on the uprise as well. Albon has been doing absolutely incredible in that car. So he needs to have a great year with the team. I love that there's a United States driver in there, but I feel like there's a better option than Logan in this case. He needs to score a lot of points next year to where Albon was and fight with Albon for position, get them higher in the Constructors' Championship, because I think he only scored a single point this season. I could be wrong, but he didn't do anything this year compared to Albon. I get it's a rookie year, but the next year is so important to how well you're going to actually do. Look at Oscar Piastri this year. He showed everyone that he could actually do this. His second place, podiums, all that in his rookie season. Everyone now knows that he could go out there and win. Logan needs to go out there and prove that he can go contend with Albon in the field. So, in Formula 1, those are really the main two that have to have a good season next year if they want to stay in F1. But now, let's go to NASCAR. And there's 3 drivers I want to talk about. The first of which being Daniel Suarez. And this one is a big one because Suarez is the leader of Trackhouse, and you might be thinking, he's the one who started it. He was the one they started this project with. How would they dump him? But look at his performance 2023 compared to Chastain. 0 wins, missed the playoffs, and really ran horribly this entire year. Compare that to Chastain, 2 wins, made it to the round of 12, won the Phoenix race, which is a big deal, and still had he had a good year even after last year where he made the championship 4. I'd say 2023 for Chastain might have been better than last year. The reason I say that is because last year his only 2 wins were on Coda on the last lap pass and Talladega, where anyone really can win in that situation. Getting the wins at Nashville, which he dominated, and Phoenix, which he also dominated, it shows that he has the actual talent. He can win anywhere in the NASCAR Cup Series. So overall, Suarez needs to have a win next year and make a deep dive into the playoffs like Chastain did. He needs to win a race, and I don't think Super Speedway would end up counting in this case, but he needs a deep run in the playoffs for sure, because this is basically unacceptable at this point, what he's been doing. And with Trackhouse just hiring Zane Smith, they've just recently hired, and Shane Van Gisbergen wanting to go Cup, and it's most likely going to be with Trackhouse, I would be worried if I was Suarez that this is a make or break year, because there are people that are breathing down your neck wanting to replace you at any second. So that's one of them. The next driver that I think we should talk about is this one. I feel like isn't really, it's not for a few more years, but Alex Bowman is in trouble because look at his performance compared to the other 3, and you're like, how is he at this team? they've all Byron, Larson, and Elliott are all one of the best in NASCAR right now, and Bowman is in that equipment where they are winning, and he hasn't done anything. Granted, 2023 he did get injured, came back, but even after he got back into the groove of things, he still was nowhere near where his other teammates were. And I think 2024 he has to show that he can end up where they are. I'm talking about at least 2 wins, I think, is needed for Bowman to tell people that he belongs at Hendrick. I feel like Larson, Elliott, and Byron have multiple win seasons, and Bowman desperately needs to get 2 wins this year. And being, at least, I think, for a Hendrick Motorsports car, round of 8 is a necessity for that team. I think Larson, Elliott, Byron, they're making the round of 8 easily next year. I'd be shocked if any of them don't. Bowman didn't really do anything this entire year. I expect Bowman needs to make the round of 8 with them, 2 wins at least, be consistently up front, and just prove that you can be up there with an Hendrick Motorsports equipment so that you can stay with that team. Because at this rate, I don't see the purpose of having him at that team anymore. And who knows? Maybe he could end up leaving. If he leaves, they might lose Ally, but we don't know that for sure because they really like Bowman. But there's always some other driver that could show up and take over that spot. But the third driver I wanted to talk about today was Harrison Burton. Now, this one is quite strange because Harrison's been in Cup this will be his 3rd season in Cup. And in those 3 seasons so far, the only thing he's done notable is flip at Daytona in the first next-gen race. So this year, I feel like he's going to have to perform almost 100% better than he did this year. Now, I don't expect playoffs, but maybe a top 20 in points, like the higher portion of the 20s in points. 21st, 22nd, 23rd in points, I feel like is a necessity for that team. And his performance, honestly, just proves why letting go of Matt DiBenedetto was a mistake for that team. Now, Harrison Burton, no disrespect to the guy, but he has not done really anything in that car this entire year. And it's time for him to show improvement, or he's going to get replaced by someone else. I don't know who that person would be, but there is probably someone, like I just said for Bowman, out there that Ford is ready to put into Cup eventually, and they want them in Cup. So that 21 car is a spot that is a Penske affiliate and will be a great ride for any young hotshot rookie who is ready to go Cup. I don't know if there is one really yet, but who knows? At this rate, they could end up putting Haley Deegan in that car. I wouldn't be surprised at this. It wouldn't be a surprise to me, honestly, if Haley ends up in the 21 car at one point. But Burton needs to have a better year in 2024, or he's going to be gone for sure. And that is just basically a guaranteed because people are not really impressed at what he's done at all. I don't know if anyone's really impressed, but that will conclude this episode of Track Talk. I would like to thank you all for listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed, please subscribe, like, for more of these new podcasts. So I will see you all in the next podcast. Take care.